Skydances Behemoth is a very interesting game. I've been hyped about this game for I think 2 years at this point. I remember seeing it at the Game Awards and being hyped, because Skydance, if you didn't know, is the same studio that made The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. But then I remembered they also made the second game, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Retribution. I've made my thoughts on that game very clear, but TLDR, it sucks. This made me worry about how this game was going to turn out. This game was either going to be really good or really bad. The game came out a few days ago, and I've played a bunch of hours. Was the game good or bad? Let's talk. As soon as I started the game, it reminded me of Saints and Sinners, obviously. You have arms, but no body. You have 2 circles down by your waist for holders. There are 2 bars on your screen for health and stamina, which I actually think use the exact same symbols from Saints and Sinners. Each finger has separate interaction, and your player info is stored down by your chest. Except instead of a journal, you have a scroll, which is pretty cool. Skydance seems to be developing a style, and the only complaint I really have about it is I wish I had a body, but it's not much. Now, the first system I want to bring up is the combat. As soon as I saw the first gameplay trailer a little while back, I started quivering in my boots, because it looked like it came straight out of God of War. If this was a flat screen game, it would be cool, but this is a VR game, so it's not. In VR, you want a certain level of interactivity with the NPCs. Think Bone Lab or Blade Sorcery. In those games, pretty much everything is physical. When I stab or slash an enemy, they may stumble or move back a bit, or just fall over completely, in accordance to where I hit them. They react to the player's actions. In this game, it's like 100% animations, and feels much more like a flat screen game. I mean, the enemies do this charge up thing and then swing. You can't interrupt it, it just happens. I have this giant gut sword, and I was excited to tear enemies apart with it. Yet when I swing the sword, it bounces off them. This should cut them in half easy, but it doesn't for some reason. And parrying is the worst. You have to swing your weapon in line with theirs to block, but there is no actual interaction in between your blades. It's just an animation. In Blade Sorcery, when you parry, the swords of both you and your enemy actually collide, and you both get feedback. It feels like you actually hit something. There are also health bars, which I'm not a fan of. There are some admittedly cool parts to combat, though. We have this cool power-up that lasts 5 seconds or so. A good hit with a sword and this activated will kill most enemies in 1 or 2 hits, but it can be so easily abused. About halfway through the game, there's a boss fight with a genuinely cool boss that screams at you like a bat. They added a mechanic for covering your ears while she screams, which was super cool, but combat in this game just isn't fun. So what I did was I activated the power-up, and while the power-up is activated, you get the ability to grab enemies, and grabbing them completely disables them. So mixing them not being able to do anything with the power-up and a good sword means you can kill any boss in pretty much seconds. I really wanted to fight this boss, and I really wanted to have a good time, but I couldn't. It isn't enjoyable. It's just plain bad. Now to what I actually like about the game, which is actually a lot. The lore seems so cool. Now, I haven't really finished the game yet, but each enemy, weapon, character, and location genuinely interests me. You can find lore around the game in the forms of skulls and scrolls. I may do a Behemoth lore video in the future, considering lore videos are kinda what I'm known for at this point. But this world genuinely keeps me engaged, and I want to know what happens next. Also, the design of everything is so interesting and unique. Like the Behemoths. Even though one is just a giant walrus and one is a giant bat, I love their design. Also, the levels, the caves, everything is beautifully crafted. My personal favorite parts of the games are these little areas you can enter to find lore or a power-up. There are no enemies, you just get to climb, look at cool scenery, and solve a kind of easy puzzle. But I love it so much. This game's beauty is no doubt helped by the amazing graphics. I genuinely never thought I'd get a VR game that looked this good and perform this well at the same time. It's really impressive. Also, something small but so good are the rope physics. This game has fully physical ropes which actually feel amazing. They aren't glitchy and do pretty much exactly what I want them to do. Traversing with them is super fun, but you can also grab enemies and items. I'm glad that they put this much work into this feature. It really paid off. A lot of VR games made by bigger studios seem to have an issue of being too comfortable. They make the game like everyone who plays it is gonna throw up if they turn too fast. They think if they make swinging or jumping or the environment move around you, that it would ruin the player experience. But 2 of the most popular VR games do exactly the opposite. Bone Lab, for example, has the player jumping around and climbing and floating, Blade Sorcery has the player grab onto a stone monster and get thrown. Saints and Sinners kind of suffered from this. Climbing felt super stiff, and there was no jump option. But Behemoth is kind of a game changer. There's climbing, swinging, jumping, and holding on to giant monsters. While it isn't perfect, it's still a great step up. I'm hoping more companies follow in their footsteps. Speaking of giant monsters, earlier I talked about how bad the combat is. But I was only really talking about the human combat in Behemoth. The Behemoth fights are so fun. Flying in the sky while trying to hit the weak points on a Behemoth is genuinely insane. Things like this are what people want in VR. I'm just really waiting for bigger studios to go and realize that. So do I like Skydances Behemoth? Yes. Normally, bad combat in a game centered around combat would be horrible, but this game makes up for it in so many ways. This is the first time in a while anything good has come out for VR. I just hope that if there's a Behemoth 2, or perhaps a Behemoth Chapter 2 Retribution, that they change the combat, because that's really my only gripe with the game. Earlier I mentioned Hellsplit Arena, and combat like that, put in this game, would craft the perfect VR game. I did hear that they are looking into changes to combat in the current game, so I don't know, maybe some of my complaints will be invalid in a few months. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps a lot. I have a Discord where you can join and talk about pretty much anything with me. And again, thanks for watching.